Hello everyone, welcome to Diamonds of Craft, where I make things. My name is Sarah and I'm bringing you a collab video again. A bunch of us in the UK got together to do a mystery swap box sort of situation where we would make up our own box with all the materials and things that we needed to make a doll, basically. So, the theme was D&D. I think all of us in the group have either got an interest in D&D or have played D&D before, so we decided to make a D&D party. We decided on all the classes, but we didn't know who was going to get which until we received our box. We knew which ones we wouldn't be getting because we were making those boxes up. I am not going to spoil what I got because I do have a little unboxing at the beginning of my video, which makes it a little bit longer, but it was fun to receive something and be able to get ideas to make a doll from that. So you can see what I got very soon. I've wanted to make a D&D doll for so long, so this was the perfect excuse to do it. I was really excited for this collab, and everyone in the collab was really nice, really lovely people. Definitely check out their videos after you've checked this one out. Let's get into it. Right, a little excitement for us all here, opening a mystery box and seeing what we have inside. The audio will switch back and forth from this voiceover to what I recorded on the day, so I'm sorry if that sounds a bit mad. Right, so I have a little note from who it's from. I will open that in a minute. Oh my god. Fabulous sweets. Yeah. Love that. We got millions of millions. Fabulous. Dip Dab. One of the best sweets ever. Fucking Kinder Bueno. Yes. How did you know? And I've never seen this before, but that looks really fun. Okay. Sweeties. Okay. Should we find out? Let's find out together what I've got. Okay. Oh, so happy. So excited. Oh, that is, oh, I know who it's from. These are cool. Right. So my magic box is from Stitchwick Witch. Oh yeah. Oh my god. Yes. Ah! Can we guess what I've got? I got Bard. Okay, so first of all, what went where and who got what? We decided on the classes, like I mentioned, and Lee, as the host, distributed them accordingly. So I got to make up the fighter class box. The necromancer went from Cabinet of Creations to Stitchwick Witch. The bard went from Stitchwick Witch to myself. The ranger went from Stephoodoll to Cabinet of Creations. The rogue went from Splendidmiscellany to Stephoodoll. The druid went from Dolleemixtures to Splendidmiscellany. And my fighter box went to Dolleemixtures. So now we can find out what is actually in the box. I am just unpacking everything now. There was a lot of oohs and ahs being thrown out as I did. Loads of colours, textures, and different fabrics. So that is fabulous. As I was pulling all of this stuff out, I just kept saying, oh, gosh, I haven't put enough in mine. Oh my gosh, there's loads, man. Oh, I love that. That is opulent. We had agreed on 2 fat quarters of fabric of all kinds, at least 2 or 3 different types, and maybe some special bits of fabric if need be. But before I get into that, I decided to just grab everything and show it off one by one without the box being in the way. So Lex included a foam sheet, some bracelets, gold cord, rhinestones, buttons and buckles, some more cord that looked like mini rope, silver beads, silk clay, something I forgot to include in my box entirely. These were some decorative beads and things. Some glittery stars, bells, yes, yes. A gold chain, jump rings, lace. That is fabulous. This fancy thing, and some more buckle type things. So this is everything that I have to work with, and there is so much. There's loads of fabric and loads of choice. My plan for this collab was to basically keep the spirit of D&D alive, so I decided to roll an actual character that I then made on D&D Beyond. I got my dice out and I wrote down a list of 8 races that I thought would be fun to try and make. Those were Dragonborn, Genasi, Aasimar, Halfling, Tabaxi, Tiefling, Orc, and Gnome. I chose 8 so I could use a d8 and not have it too complicated. So I rolled right out of frame and I got a Tiefling. Very exciting, and I have just the doll for it. This is Gilda Goldstag, I believe. I got her in a bundle and her horns will do nicely. As usual, it is prep time. At this moment, I should have probably realized that her horns were going to be a nightmare to work with. I also decided to remove all of the hair from a cut in the back of her head rather than the neck hole. I think the horns were in the way there as well. I super glued that all back up and tried my best to remove the face all at once, and I failed. Never mind, it all comes off the same anyway. I then painted her horns a black base colour as I wanted to then put a blue metallic paint over the top. I also painted her head brown to black so her hair can be filled in later. So I had a spare Catrine Demue tile which I added an epoxy tip to. Epoxy wasn't included in the box, but we could still use some outside materials, and this was easier to mold and blend into the plastic than the silk clay. I then painted the tail to match the horns and made a hole for it to go into her lower back. For the hair, I untangled all of the yarn that was provided and I plugged it. Which, with horns, is a massive problem, it turns out. It was a bit fiddly in those areas, but I did manage. For the bigger chunks, I divided those into smaller bits because they're going to be rushed out and straightened anyway. Once it was all brushed out and bushy, it was time to straighten, which was probably a bigger problem than the rerouting. I did catch the horns on the irons and it did melt, but I figure those can be battle related or something like that. Then it was time to curl all of this hair. I heated this metal knitting needle and curled the fibre around it. After this difficult angle, I got myself together and I propped her up properly. This is probably my favourite way to style hair. The yarn just stays put, it is so easy and it looks great. For the face, I wanted to make her look, well, kind of terrifying. She is a tiefling after all, they are of dark descent, so I wanted her face to be kind but also scary. Kind of like when you see someone with resting bitch face, but they're actually really sweet. So I went with making her eyes all red and fiery for the shadow. Then, for something I've never done before, I am making her sclera black and the iris is going to be white. In between filming shots, I also decided on black lips, but that's just the base for now. I just have to try and match this other eye, which is always the hardest part about face-ups. I don't need them to be perfect and symmetrical, that's kind of boring, but I do like them to at least be the same shape and size for the most part. I tried to go for a more rounded eye this time to offset how scary they are with being quite cute. And since I am impatient with this, I did fill in the whites with acrylic paint so that they're really bright. Some extra shadows and contour to her face to give it more life. It was starting to look a little too red, and I chose to keep her skin colour this nice golden colour that it was already because, well, why not? So I added a little more yellow to keep those highlighted bits light. Now for eyebrows. The eyebrows were a difficult thing, mainly because her horns are not in the way, but I thought it would look weird having eyebrows then horns right on top. So I drew back in little ones, which I think this doll already kind of had. For the white parts, I wanted to add some depth to them. I couldn't just leave them a blank white. So in all of my wisdom, I tried adding a purple gradient, which I did not like. It didn't quite work out how I imagined it would, so I took it off and I did end up doing like a cell shaded gradient instead. In the meantime, I added a bit more depth with purple around the eyes. I felt like the face was a bit bare of decoration. She is a bard and therefore extra AF as far as I'm concerned. So I decided to give her this decoration in the middle of her head. It was all based off musical symbols and things I found in sheet music, and I arranged it in a way that I thought looked cool. I figured she could have either been born with it or branded with it in some way. Either way, it is permanent and relevant to her creativity. I really love this trim, but the beads on it were making it a little bulky. So I figured I could cut those beads off and use them elsewhere. Quick matte flip, because the pink side is getting rather ruined and I didn't want to dirty up any of this fabric when I was making the clothes. So I'm going to keep it purple until all of the garments are made. I wanted to use this fancy silk fabric as accents on her shirt, but it was a bit too big and stiff for that. I did make her some green pants which matched my illustration of this bard, but I did not like them at all, so I made her some black ones instead. I took my inspiration for this shirt from Pinterest illustrations and from Sugar of BTS. These two looks inspired the shirt and the top of the coat type thing I'm making. I don't think the clothes have to make any sense, they just have to look interesting, and there's nothing more interesting than K-pop wardrobes. Okay, so now we're on to the coat type thing. I keep saying that because it's a garment I've just pulled out of nowhere for style and a little functionality. The back needed 2 pieces because she has a tail that needs to come through, and I did want a fancy piece to go over her clothes because she's peacocking, I guess. So I lined the inside of the coat with the fabric from before and it turned out really nice. For the shirt ruffles, I cut the fabric with pinking shears and fray checked the edges, then folded it over and gathered it before stitching it on. I put a bit of green in the collar to match the green in the sleeves, and that's all of the clothes made. I didn't want to use any sort of outside material for the belt and extra pieces to hang weapons from. To attempt my own, I cut a few long strips of the suede fabric and fray checked those too. I cut this to the right size to fit the little belt buckle, which I was determined to use. I don't know how belt buckles attach to leather usually, and I found out how to do it after the fact, but it still works the same. I measured it and I cut the edge into a point so that it would thread easier. Finally, onto the instruments and accessories. When making this character on D&D Beyond, I had to choose 3 instruments. So I thought a lyre would be quite amusing, as tieflings are supposed to be of hellish descent, and I tend to associate lyres and harp things with angelic or celestial beings. I just thought it would be funny if that was her instrument of choice. I cut the lyre shape from cardstock and used the foam sheet to cut more out. I wanted to make the bottom of it stick out a little more than the top. All of the lyres I looked at had weird shapes, but the bottom was a little more rounded. I used the silk clay to bulk that out. I then had a hard time making it look good at all. I think the idea was there, and in theory it worked perfectly, but in reality the instrument was a little too big. I covered it in epoxy, however I am sure my epoxy is on the way out, or the ratio just wasn't good because it didn't fully cure. I tried painting it, but it ended up cracking anyway, so I started again and I will sort that out later. Before I scrapped the first version completely, I did make a little harness for the lyre to sit in and decorated it with rhinestones. I also made a tantan, I believe it's called, a little drum for the dramatic times. This took me a few goes too, but I ended up with something half decent. I painted it a light brown and added some wooden detailing onto the sides. For the drum part, I glued some of that silk onto the top. I glued more of that suede around the top to cover the ugly bits. And then I used these things for pegs. To attach this to the doll, I made a little holster. I did use these buckles that I already had to add a little detail on there. I couldn't help myself, so that's another strike for me. Back to the lyre. I made this one out of foam again, and I covered it in Sculpey. The foam did disintegrate in the oven, but it worked out in the end. It just means the lyre is hollow. So I painted that a nice colour to match the drum. I added these little decorations to make it look even fancier. And I did add little wire strings onto it after. The boots I just repainted. They were the ones that came with the doll and they were pretty perfect. My next strike was adding this cord that I had, which just fits those buckles perfectly. I only wanted to add a little detail onto the boots, but yeah, that's another one for me. And the last thing that I did, which was strike 4, was I made a little potion of healing as an extra detail. I did this with UV resin and some mica powder. I did make 2 just in case one went horribly wrong. Then I glued that directly onto the doll. Okay, so I will show you the final instruments and accessories. Here is the drum and the lyre. I also made some little daggers out of toothpicks because she actually had no weapons at all. I added a length of rope onto the belt as well as little dagger holders. and a proper harness for the finished lyre. I did also find a little hatchet charm I added in as well. I mean, I guess that's strike 5, but I'm already out. Adding all of these little details was a treat. I have never been so involved with something like this. There are so many elements, so many little details that I really enjoyed making. I also did make a little jar of cookies, you know, for snacks. And with that, she is done. And here she is, the finished product, the finished card. I was so excited to open that card and get barred. I'm gonna say what everyone knows I'm gonna say at this very moment and say that I'm so pleased with how this turned out. I am, though. I love every doll that I've done. I just like the fact that I've completed it, mainly. Right up until just before filming this, I had no name. No name for this girl. But you will know from the thumbnail what her name is. I've decided to call her Lyra because she plays a lyre. I love the fact that I rolled Tiefling. It's fantastic. I do have a Tiefling character that I play in another campaign. But she's not a bard, so this was just so fun to make. All the little things, all the little details in the belt, and I may have cheated a little bit with adding, you know, these trims and buckles and stuff, but next time I do a mystery box, it's gonna be the challenge. It's gonna be hands down the challenge, no matter what. So, yeah. Go and watch everybody else's videos, like I said at the beginning. You know, everyone did such a good job. Everyone always does such a good job. It's not easy, and especially when you only have what's in your box to make it. So next time I will definitely just stick to my box. There was so much. Lex gave me so many things. It was I still have loads left, and I really wanted to use it all. I just couldn't. If you like this video, give it a like, I guess. If you want to watch more content like this, consider a subscribe. Don't be a dick in the comments. Ring my bell. This is a bell. This is a bell. It's not a bell. Everybody's channel links will be down in the description box below. Like I said, check them out if you really want to. This is a great collab, and I hope that we get to do more like this in the future. I will post all of the pictures on my Instagram, once again, all taken by the very talented Will Charlton Photography. So give him a like too if you really liked all of the pictures. If you think of a name for our party, maybe you could leave suggestions of that down below. It might be interesting. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Or is that a cat?